He didn't feel guilty when she signed the divorce papers. He felt free. Jackson Pierce stood at the top of Chicago, his city, his empire, his rules. He handed his pregnant wife a pen and called it kindness. He walked into that elevator without looking back. He sent one final text. "We are done. Do not contact me again." And he smiled. But here's what he didn't know. The woman crying in that parking garage, she wasn't breaking. She was becoming. And the papers he forced her to sign in that rush, he never read the fine print. He never read what he gave away. Tonight, you're not watching a love story. You're watching a man dismantle his own empire one cruel decision at a time, while the woman he discarded builds something he can never touch. Stay with me. Because the moment he realizes what he signed will change everything. Every choice you make in arrogance leaves a door open for justice. This story is proof that what you throw away doesn't disappear. It comes back, and it comes back stronger. If this kind of story hits differently for you, the kind that makes you think, makes you feel, makes you breathe differently, at 2 a.m., hit that like button right now. Drop a comment below telling me, Team Camila, or did Jackson deserve one more chance? Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe, because we tell stories here that stay with you long after they're over.
Her collapse in the garage was a scene I would never witness. I did not feel the concrete against her back or her sudden, sharp pain. My hand was not on my stomach. It was on my phone, confirming dinner. My world was moving forward. It had to. Any pain she felt was a consequence of her own fragility, not my choice. She would not come after me. I made sure of it. Her blurred vision and fumbling keys were miles away from my thoughts. I was in a car, moving smoothly through the city she was falling apart in. Other people's lives were just background noise. My phone buzzed. A message I needed to send. A final clean cut. We are done. Do not contact me again. The screen went dark. My world felt orderly. I closed a door that should have never been opened. Her sobs were a sound I would not have to hear. Her forehead against a steering wheel was an image I would not have to see. I believed I was saving her from a world she could never conquer. I did not know the depths of her quiet strength. I did not know the secret she carried was not one life, but two. Before the sun rose, my world was already brighter. Hers was about to change in ways I never intended. Chicago's dawn was crisp and full of promise. While the city worked, my life was finally corrected. The buses and coffee shops were part of my symphony. I was in my penthouse, looking out at the same view, but my window showed a kingdom, not a cage. My eyes were clear. My mind was sharp. My heart was a steady, powerful engine. The divorce papers were on my lawyer's desk, a transaction completed. Her scent was a memory I'd already begun to erase. I was not heartbroken. I was focused. I was free. My past taught me to cut away anything that did not serve the goal. She was a miscalculation. A project I took on, believing I could mold her fragility into fortitude. I had tried to give her a world she could not build for herself. I thought my strength would be enough for both of us. It was not. She had mistaken my ambition for a safe harbor. She never understood the storm was the point. She did not fit the image of a true partner. Her call from work was a problem I no longer had to solve. Her supervisor's concern was not my burden. Ready? She would never be ready for the life I lead. For 3 years, I gave her a script. Be quiet. Look perfect. Be supportive. Stand in the shadows and allow me to command the light. I gave her simple instructions. But she was always so complicated. I told her she overthought everything. I said her opinions were irrelevant at those functions. I called her emotional. I told her to be grateful for my patience. She was. For a time, she listened like a child who needed a firm hand. She mistook my control for care. She never fought. She never had a fire of her own. She thought silence was the price of admission to my world. But the price was strength, a price she could not pay. And so the home is gone. The marriage is gone. Her future was a question mark, hanging in a space I no longer occupied. I had no one to answer to, no one to slow me down. I had allies, not friends. I had partners, not confidants. I knew about her intelligence, an analyst's mind trapped in a timid soul. It was a waste of potential, a tool she never sharpened. I built my empire with force and applause. As the city lit up, I stood on top of it. I cleaned my hands of her. I wrapped myself in the power I had earned. I felt nothing but a cold, clean sense of rightness. Safety was an illusion I had stopped believing in. I knew what came next for me. More growth, more power, more control. I did not consider how she would survive a pregnancy alone. Her life was now her own problem to solve. Her ashes were not my concern. I am not the man who helps a fallen woman stand. I am the man who tells her she should not have fallen in the first place. But Camilla Rhodes was about to learn a lesson I had no interest in teaching. Chicago was my city again. Every street, every restaurant, every corner was mine. Her memory was a ghost I had successfully exorcised. I did not need her to leave. I had already made her disappear. A week later, I heard she was gone, dragging her life behind her at the airport. Running away. It did not surprise me. It was predictable. Her whole existence had been reduced to what she could carry. A bottle of water and a secret I was free from. She chose New York City, a foolish choice. Not a place for reinvention, a place to be crushed. New York is a city that exposes weakness. She would not last a month there. The city greeted me with open arms whenever I landed. Horns blaring a welcome, cabs rushing to serve me. The city exhaled power, and I breathed it in. For her, it was chaos. For me, it was opportunity. It was the right place to build an empire. And maybe, just maybe, it was the right place for her to finally understand her own insignificance. I heard she found a place in Washington Heights, a fitting address for her new, smaller life, a brick wall for a view, anonymous, quiet, perfect for someone who never learned how to speak up. I was also having a new beginning, a public one, a powerful one, with Sienna. We moved through the city I owned. We were not hiding, we were conquering. I saw Manhattan from the top floor. She saw it from the street, a stranger, unnoticed. We were in the same city, but living in different worlds. Central Park was a jewel in my crown. For her, a place to sit, alone. Her hands on her stomach, clinging to the last piece of a life that was never truly hers. This was the cost of building an empire. I understood that. Sacrifices had to be made. Standing here, I felt the city of Los Angeles pulsing below me, a beast I had tamed. This celebration was not for love. It was a declaration of power. Sienna was the perfect symbol for this new era, sharp, beautiful, and utterly devoted to the victory I represented. Shedding the past was a painful but necessary surgery. Camilla was the past, a gentle, sentimental memory that had no place in the world I was creating. This was the right thing to do, the only thing to do. A king cannot be burdened by a heart that feels too much. I was becoming a king. He was not a person I knew. The rooftop glittered, a perfect stage for my ascension. The flashes from the cameras were a kind of applause. I saw the desperate hunger in the eyes of our guests. They all wanted a piece of what I had. They orbited me. At the center of it all, I placed my hand on Sienna. A gesture of possession, a signal to everyone watching that she, too, was one of my acquisitions. She smiled, playing her part with flawless precision. Her sweetness was a weapon, one I recognized and appreciated. We were two predators hunting the same thing. Success. And we looked magnificent doing it. She was the perfect partner for this life, a life I had to build alone, a life I deserved after all. She knew what to ask. Her whispers were always strategic. Her voice, a velvet arrow aimed at the future. The board? She murmured. They approve it Monday, I said. My confidence was not an act. It was a fact. Pierce Biosystems would become a titan. Then she mentioned the other name. And your ex-wife? The question was a test. I answered with the scorn it deserved. Camila? A dry, bitter sound. She is irrelevant. I pictured her somewhere. Broken. That was not my problem anymore. It could not be. Sienna's smile was my reward. She understood that sentiment was a liability I had long since discarded. He had learned that from his father. It was a very hard lesson. Then I heard my mother. Her words cut through the noise, a familiar blade of disapproval. That girl is not Camilla. My jaw tightened. The comparison was an old wound. Deep down, a cold truth echoed. Camilla's belief in me had been genuine. She saw a man, not a monster. But the monster was more powerful. The monster was the one who could build all this. My ego was a fortress, and I retreated behind its walls. I would not let that ghost haunt this perfect day. I would not allow anyone to question this. I would make them all see I was right. This was a battle I was ready to have, a battle I was going to win. Mother will adjust, I murmured to Sienna, the words meant for myself. They will all accept you. Her smile grew sharper. She knew this was a promise of my power, not my love. It will happen soon, I assured her. I had planned everything. My world was a machine of my own design, with no room for error, no room for weakness. I lifted my glass to the sun, a toast to a future I had built from the ashes of my own heart, a future where I was untouchable. There were no cracks in my world. I had made sure of it. I had to believe it. He had no other choice at this point. The announcement was a weapon. I had crafted it myself. Every word, every photo was chosen for maximum impact. A surgical strike designed to sever the final thread. I wanted her to see it. I wanted her to understand that her world was gone. Replaced. This was not cruelty. It was a mercy. A clean cut is better than a slow bleed. I imagined her phone lighting up, her world shrinking to a single, bright, painful image of my new life. It was a necessary end, a final closing of a door I never should have opened. He was doing her a favor. He was setting her free. The headlines would be brutal. The new power couple. The shock engagement. I had approved them all. I could picture the ring, a diamond the size of a fist, sparkling on every screen in the country. It was a symbol of what she had lost, what she could never have. A part of me knew the pain this would cause, but that part of me was weak. A relic of a man I had to kill to become who I am now. Progress requires sacrifice, and I had decided she was the sacrifice I was willing to make. He was not going to feel guilty. He could not afford it. I felt the weight of the watch on my wrist. Her first anniversary gift. Sienna had noticed it earlier. I told her it was a family heirloom. A lie. The truth was colder. It was an act of desecration. I was taking a sacred memory and making it profane, turning a symbol of her love into a trophy of my conquest. It proved the past had no power over me. It was just a thing, a piece of metal and glass. It meant nothing, just like she meant nothing. He had to believe this. He had to keep telling himself this over and over again. The champagne was crisp. The laughter of the crowd was a pleasant hum. I had won. This was the pinnacle. A fortress of wealth and influence so high that no one could touch me, especially not the ghost of a soft woman. I had outrun her memory. I had buried her under layers of success. The pain had sharpened into something useful, something that fueled me. I would not think of her again. She was gone, erased, and I was finally, completely free. He was never going to look back. He had made a promise to himself. The cameras flashed again. I smiled, a perfect, empty smile. My future was a blueprint, and I was following it without deviation. The company, the power, the woman by my side, who was a mirror of my own ambition. There was no room for anything else, no space for regret. I felt a final, faint echo of something soft, a memory of her. I pushed it down, deep into the darkness where I kept all the things I had to destroy to get here. I chose this. I chose to be this. And I would never, ever let myself forget why. I had won. Her weakness was a constant, predictable thing. Stress would undo her. A doctor's warning would be her undoing. But a stranger outside her door was not part of my calculation. I could not picture it. I could not picture someone offering her kindness. It was a language I did not speak. I was in a boardroom. The light was sharp. My expression was steel. I was not offering pity. I was demanding compliance. I was not looking at tears. I was looking at profit margins. I was nodding as I closed a deal that would ruin a competitor. "Can I come in?" he asked her. She hesitated. I never hesitate. I never ask for permission. I take what is mine. He knelt to pick up apples from her floor. It was the last thing on earth I would ever do. "You do not have to do that," she whispered. "I know," he said. He knew, but I did not, and I did not care. This is why I do it. I watched a fragile thing inside her tremble. The groceries were a simple kindness, a key to unlock the door. I leaned against the stove, granting her the illusion of space. I spoke softly. "This is the weapon of men like him. Public shame. It cuts deeper than any blade." She swallowed my words. She denied the wound. I saw the truth in her eyes. I let my expression soften. It was not a lie. It was a mirror. She collapsed into a chair. She whispered her surrender. I agreed with a calm voice. "You are human. He should have been your shield." Instead, he became the storm. She covered her face. The pain was an old song she still heard. The failure was a brand he had seared onto her skin. I gave her the answer she needed. You loved him. Love is a poison that lingers. It does not care about worth. Her breath caught. My words were a new kind of medicine. The apartment grew quiet. Only the low hum of the refrigerator remained. I chose my next words with care. "You are not alone. Not anymore. I will be your shield now, whatever comes. You will not face it by yourself." "How?" The word was a question and a plea. Her phone screamed on the table. A new headline appeared on the screen. Jackson Pierce had made a public move. The first line was a masterpiece of cruelty. It drained the life from her face. "I hope she finds purpose." He called her empty, a vessel he had discarded. Her hand shook. I felt my jaw tighten. This was the moment. A storm was beginning, one I had been waiting for. It would consume us all. For days she moved through a fog of grief. She pretended to work. She pretended to rest. She pretended to eat. She pretended the stories of his new life did not feel like stones in her chest. But pretending takes energy. She had none left. I watched over her. I never crossed the line. I always asked for entry. I brought her soup. I brought her tea. They were simple things, quiet offerings. They were also anchors, tying her to me. My steady presence made her feel brave. My watchful eyes told her she mattered. She had not told me about the child. It was not a lack of trust in me. It was a lack of trust in the world he had created for her. Then the call came. It changed the battlefield completely. She sat on the couch. Her laptop showed a spreadsheet she could not see. Her phone lit up with an unfamiliar name, a lawyer. Her breath caught in her throat. She had not heard from this person since the papers were signed. Hello? Her voice was so small. The lawyer's voice was rushed, loud with discovery. We must talk. A cold fear ran through her. She asked if something was wrong. I was reviewing your files, the lawyer said. Something was a mistake. I checked it twice. It was not my error. What was not right? Camila asked. The lawyer took a sharp breath. Your former husband did not read what he signed. Camila was confused. People do that all the time. No. The lawyer was firm. He made you sign, but he did not see the other copy, the one his own assistant put in the wrong folder. Camila sat up. She asked what the lawyer was saying. I am saying, the lawyer said, that he signed a forfeiture clause, a clause he never meant to see. Camila's world tilted. Forfeiture of what? I could hear papers rustling, a quiet curse. The clause says Jackson Pierce gives up all parental rights for any child conceived before the final date. The room spun around her. What? A whisper. Legally, the lawyer said, voice shaking. If you have a child, he has no rights. None? Not money, not custody, nothing. He gave away everything. The moment he forced those papers on you, the world became a single point of light for her. Her children. Her tiny, fragile children, safe from him in a way she never dreamed. But he is not aware, Camila murmured. No, the lawyer said, and he will fight. He will try to bury you. But he cannot. He signed away his own power. Camila touched her lips. I never wanted this. I only wanted peace. You deserve it, the lawyer told her gently. But he deserves to pay. Tears filled her eyes. It was not pain. It was release. I need to think, she whispered. Take your time, the lawyer said. But this changes everything. Do not be afraid. The call ended. Camila stared at nothing. Her heartbeat was a drum inside her chest. The babies moved. They were a reminder. They were alive. A soft knock brought her back. I opened the door for her. She did not even notice. I stood there holding 2 cups. I had brought hot chocolate. I froze when I saw her face. It was full of tears and shock and a terrible new strength. My voice was a soft question. What happened? Her lips opened. The war was about to begin, and I could see it in her eyes. She was no longer afraid. I did not push her for details. I did not need to. Secrets have a certain weight. I could feel this one trembling in the air. I simply gave her the warm cup. I sat at the table. I waited. My quiet patience was the one thing she could not resist. It always worked. I am pregnant, she whispered. The words were a ghost in the room. My eyes softened. A calculated response. I was not surprised. I wondered, I said quietly. You hold your stomach. When you think no one is watching, her breath hitched. You knew. I suspected, I corrected, but the truth had to be yours to give. She looked at her hands. They were shaking. I do not know how. To do this alone. You will not be alone, I said. 4 simple words. A promise. A cage. They almost broke her. But this time, it was a good breaking. She told me everything. The danger, the fear, the cruelty of Jackson, the rushed papers, and finally, the lawyer's discovery. The hot chocolate grew cold, but the silence in her heart was finally broken. I leaned forward. What that man did to you cannot be forgiven. I let the words hang in the air, but this, I just gestured toward her. This is not your end. It felt like the end, she said with a weak laugh. It is the beginning, I said softly. You are building again. She could not feel it yet, but I could. And I was right. The next weeks were a quiet campaign. She started walking in the morning. She breathed the crisp autumn air. The trees were letting go of their leaves. With every step, A piece of her woke up, a piece he had tried to kill. She wore colors again, soft greens, warm browns, sweaters that showed the new life inside her. She did not hide it anymore. She cooked. She worked without tears, and I was there, a constant presence, a quiet guardian. Sometimes we spoke, sometimes we sat in silence. I had perfected the art of being there. One Saturday, I brought her a gift, a small white box. I thought you might like this. Inside was a journal, forest green with gold edges. For when you are ready to write your own story, I told her. She traced its edges with one finger. I saw something in her chest unfold. No one had ever given her something so thoughtful, so personal. Gift of clarity. This was for the future. An empire required sacrifice. It demanded a clean slate. I looked at the merger documents, at the foundation of a dynasty. What I did was not cruel. It was necessary. I severed a weakness to ensure strength. My engagement was a strategic alliance, a perfect union of power and image. This world is built by men who make hard choices. I was simply making mine. My legacy was taking shape. Perfect. Unstoppable. Any whispers of the past were just noise from a world I had already left behind. New York was a distant memory. The woman who lived there was a ghost, and Jackson Pierce was finally building his true kingdom. My work was a masterpiece of ambition. Yet the board was full of timid old men. They did not see the vision. They saw only risk. They called my engagement to Sienna a distraction. Fools. She was a beautiful shield, a perfect piece of public theater. They whispered her name like a curse. They muttered about timing, about secrets. They spoke of the woman I had erased. Why was the divorce so fast? What was I hiding? I was hiding nothing. I had simply pruned a dying branch. I dismissed their pathetic gossip. My career was a fortress. Nothing could touch me. My genius was undeniable. The foundation of my empire showed its first crack on a Tuesday. A glitch. It was impossible. My software, my perfect creation, faltered during a key demonstration. The system froze. An underling collapsed. My control slipped. I raised my voice, a necessary correction for an incompetent fool. The moment was captured, sent into the world. My company's stock fell 3%. Sienna tried her empty comfort. Her touch felt like a chain. Not now, I told her. The world turned my justified anger into a joke. But the worst part was the truth. This was not a random error. It was sabotage. Someone inside my walls had betrayed me, and I did not know who. 3,000 miles meant nothing. The past was still the past. I sat in that boardroom while a folder slid toward me like a snake. It held records of redirected funds, financial heresy tied to my name. Someone had used my authority to commit fraud. They dared to question me. The chairman's voice was ice. "We need clarification," he said. I stared at the pages. My heart beat like a drum. The approvals were lies, forged with my digital signature. But the dates were real. It was a perfect trap. A meticulous disassembly of my life's work. My mind raced through a list of enemies. Still, I did not think of her. I never considered the woman I discarded could ever rise again. I did not imagine my past could return with such sharp teeth, and I never knew another man, a far stronger man, was pulling the strings. I left the meeting with fire in my veins. I held my own digital death warrant, my login, my signature. A ghost in my machine was systematically destroying me. Someone with my keys was burning down my house. My pulse hammered against my ribs. My focus narrowed to a single point: find the traitor. I did not think of her. The woman I paid to disappear was not a variable in my equation. She was less than nothing. A footnote in a forgotten chapter. I did not know that somewhere else a clock was ticking down, that my downfall was tied to a night I forced a signature, that new life was coming into the world, a life that would be my undoing. The real battle was just beginning. The pressure in my chest was unbearable. I spent the night staring at lines of code, searching for the ghost. The stress felt like a physical weight. Every sharp pain in my gut was a new betrayal. My empire was bleeding out, and I could not find the wound. My hand shook as I dialed my head of security for the 10th time. I needed answers. Something is happening, I told him. He wasted no time. I am on my way. He arrived minutes later. His presence was a small comfort in the storm. We mapped out every possible threat, every disloyal employee, every corporate rival. "You are okay," he said. "We have this." But his voice was a thin shield against the coming onslaught. The ride to the office was a blur of paranoia. Every car felt like it was following me. The city smelled of my own failure. Early reports of the hack were leaking. Twins, 2 points of entry, a high-risk breach. My mind raced. Not now. Not when I was so close to victory. Not when my world finally felt solid beneath my feet. My security team stayed close. We reviewed every access log. The sound of 2 tiny anomalies echoed in the data. Fast. Fluttering. Fighting my defenses. Tears of rage filled my eyes. "They are strong," one analyst said. "They want to be here." A flood of fury washed over me. Hours passed like seconds. Men moved quickly. I barked orders. Machines hummed with activity. I stood like a stone wall, watching my kingdom crumble. A new contraction of fear tightened my grip. "I am losing," I thought. "I know," a small voice inside me answered. "You are not alone. The traitors are here. They are everywhere." I believed it. For the first time, I fully believed I was surrounded. Then, just before noon, the breach became critical. A single cry of data escaped our quarantine. A name, a hospital. It was small, pink, but fiercely determined. A second cry followed. A location. It was a girl's name. I laughed without humor, exhausted and overwhelmed. 2 miracles. 2 living, breathing pieces of evidence against me. "You did it," my paranoia whispered. "You let this happen." I looked at the screen, my eyes burning. "We are compromised," I asked. "More than compromised," my security chief said softly. "You are exposed." The babies were safe in their sterile box. I was in a cage of my own making. I watched the data streams, fear and pride warring within me. They were fighters, just like the woman I had tried to break. Later, in the quiet of my office, my security chief sat with me. No chaos, just the silent hum of my dying company. "You exposed us," I murmured. He shook his head. "You exposed yourself, Jackson, and you exposed them." I let my eyes close. The exhaustion was a physical blow. But before sleep came, one thought burned in my mind. My life was not just beginning, it was ending, and somewhere across the country, a woman I tried to erase held the truth that would destroy me. The news broke before I had a chance to contain it. I was staring at a screen, exhausted, when my assistant rushed in. His eyes were wide. He held his phone like a weapon. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Sir, you are trending." I blinked, confused. "Trending? What do you mean, trending?" Before he could answer, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my publicist. A link. "There is something you should see." My stomach clenched. "Is it about the stock? Is it worse?" "The stock is the least of it," he wrote back. His words were cold. "It is about her." I opened the link slowly, and my world stopped. A single photograph filled the screen. It showed another man carrying her down a hallway. Her head was on his shoulder. She looked breakable, vulnerable, heartbreakingly real. And the caption read, "Who is the mystery woman? This world is built on order, my order." I was reinforcing that structure when the whispers began. A disturbance in the boardroom, a ripple of notifications, annoying but trivial, until the photo appeared. Her, Camila, looking broken, as she should, but held by him, Adrian Crowell, a snake in a $3,000 suit. Then I saw the second image, two bassinets, a headline crafted to cut me, a story spinning out of my control. My blood turned to ice. It was a lie, a fabrication. She couldn't. We couldn't. His statement was a declaration of war. He said he was protecting her. He was branding her, claiming what was mine. Panic is for the weak, but a cold dread coiled in my gut. I built my world meticulously. I controlled every story. She was a footnote, a closed chapter. Now she was a liability, a mess I thought I had cleaned up. And he was using her to get to me. This was not about her. This was about him, and I had to end it. His words were a poison arrow, a public statement. He dared to speak for her, for my history. He painted her as a saint, a victim, a brave woman. Every syllable was a calculated insult aimed directly at me. He claimed he was offering support. He was seizing an opportunity. He was building a narrative where he was the hero and I was the villain. Her silence was compliance. She was letting him do this, letting him twist our past into something ugly. He claimed the children were not his. A clever move. It left the question hanging in the air, a question that pointed right at me. Then my phone screamed with a new alert. A photo of me, my rage on display for the world. They were all watching, waiting for my next move. The headline was a masterpiece of humiliation. They had caught me looking exactly how I felt, trapped, furious, terrified. There are two truths in my universe. I write the story, and Camila Rhodes is nothing without me. Both were lies now. The boardroom was my arena. I was defending my empire from a minor failure. Then my phone became a beacon of my own collapse. The buzzing would not stop. It was a disease spreading through the room. Every executive saw it. Their quiet judgment was a physical blow. The chairman showed me the screen, an act of pity or a challenge. There she was, my former wife, in the arms of my enemy, Crowell, a man who dismantled titans for sport. Then I saw them. The bassinets, the headline, the twins. My mind went blank. The world dissolved into a silent roar. Twins, her twins, with him. The room spun. Voices were just noise. Nothing mattered but the image on that screen. A violation, a theft. He had taken my past. He was using her to destroy my future. The tablet felt like a tombstone in my hands. I stared at her face, so weak, so pathetic, leaning on Adrian Crowell, a man of immense power who despised me. I never knew why. Now I did. He saw my weakness. And her name was Camila. The word twins echoed in my skull. It was impossible. A medical impossibility. My hands shook. My vision blurred. Mystery twins. The headline was a mockery. Crowell supporting former Mrs. Pierce. They erased me. They replaced me. The meeting ended. I did not notice. Sienna was there, a ghost at the edge of my vision. Her voice was a fly buzzing in my ear. I heard nothing but the blood pounding in my head. This was his move, a public execution. Crowell, the silent king. He could ruin a company with a whisper. Now he was using my history, my wife, to do it to me. And I had no idea why. No, this was not happening. I left the room like a man escaping a fire. The cameras were vultures. Sienna was a chain, trying to hold me back. Please talk to me. Her words were meaningless. I shoved her away. She persisted. Her heels clicked on the marble floor. A countdown to my own destruction. She thinks this is about embarrassment. She thinks this is a game. She had twins, Sienna. Twins. The words were a howl. I saw the fear in the faces of my staff. Good. Let them be afraid. She whispered that I had called Camila fragile, that the doctors gave warnings. She was. She was broken. My fault. A flicker of a memory. A night I left her crying, begging me to stay. I crushed the thought. Guilt is a useless emotion. It clouds judgment. Sienna touched my arm. Her voice was a razor. Jackson, are you sure? They cannot be mine. The words came out on their own. A reflex, a desperate prayer. My doctor said. The memory hit me then. The specialist's office. The diagnosis, a temporary issue. The injections I never finished. The follow-up I ignored. The doctor's voice echoed in my head. You may still be fertile. My blood ran cold. Oh God. What if? No, I would not allow it. They are not mine, I said it again. Quieter. A lie I needed to believe. Sienna's eyes were cold. Then why does he look like you? She showed me the picture. The baby's face. My face. That nose, that jawline. It was my own reflection in miniature. The world tilted. A strangled noise escaped my throat. No, it was not possible, but it was. The panic was a physical thing, an explosion in my chest. If those children were mine, she held everything. My legacy, my name, my control. She held the power to utterly destroy me. New York. I had to go to New York. I grabbed my coat. My voice was a rasp. Sienna tried to stop me, asking what I would do. I did not answer. She already knew. I was going to get the truth, but I already knew the truth. It was a storm that was about to break over me. The rain against the window was a war drum, a fitting soundtrack for the end of my world. She was in that hospital, sleeping, believing she was safe. With them, the twins, proof of my carelessness, proof of my lies. She thought she had survived me. She had no idea. I was not coming for her. I was coming for my story. I was coming to reclaim what was mine. 2 a.m, a perfect time. The world is quiet. People are vulnerable. I would find her, and I would fix this. I would make her see that she was, and always would be, mine. Her eyes opened. Of course they did. She always slept like a cornered animal. My little Camila. A voice whispered her name, not mine. Harper Quinn. A snake of a different breed. A lawyer. Dripping rain and betrayal onto the hospital floor. I watched from the shadows of my mind, imagining the scene. Harper held a folder. My name, my company, my secrets. Delivered anonymously. A ghost was helping her. Someone wanted me to fall. Jackson is coming here. Fear, good. She should be afraid. He is already on a flight. Harper's words were a death sentence. He will not be arriving empty-handed. The lawyer was preparing her for war. Harper opened the folder. My life in paper and ink, my signatures on documents I had forgotten. All of my beautiful, perfect lies. The document was my own death warrant. A fertility evaluation. My evaluation. The one I used to break her. The one I used to justify leaving. I told her it was routine. I told her it was her fault. And there on page 3 was the truth. Temporary infertility. Conception is still possible. For 6 months. Our babies were conceived 4 months before I left. She knew. The words echoed in my mind. He knew, he knew, he knew. Harper twisted the knife. He hid it from you. He rushed the divorce. He made you sign, all while knowing he could be the father. I could hear her breaking from 1,000 miles away, a small, wounded sound. The sound I once found so satisfying. Now it was the sound of my own ruin. Every lie I had ever told her was coming home. It was a matter of order, of rightness. A man secures his legacy. He protects his bloodline. That is the fundamental law. She was weak, broken by grief. I was freeing her from the cycle of failure. The miscarriages were a sickness in our marriage, And I was the surgeon cutting it out. Each paper I had her sign was a kindness, a step toward a clean, orderly future for us both. Now I fly toward New York to correct her mistake. She thinks she can hide my children. She thinks another man can stand in my place. This is not a betrayal. It is a rescue mission. I am coming to save my heirs from their mother's confusion. That document she holds means nothing. It was a formality, a gesture, a peace offering to a fragile woman. It was never meant to be a weapon. The vultures were waiting at the hospital, flashing lights and screaming questions. They call it a scandal. I call it a father's duty. They ask if the children are mine. The insult is a hot knife in my gut. They ask if she hid them. Of course she did. She was told to, convinced by him, by Crow. He is the real poison here. I push through the mob. My voice is quiet. My fury is not for them. It is for the man inside who thinks he can steal my life. My focus is a straight line to the neonatal wing. Everything else is just noise before the storm. The hospital walls are white and silent. They judge me. I can feel it. I am a force of nature in this sterile place. I find the floor, the hallway, the door to my children, and then a shadow becomes a man, Adrian Crow. He stands there, a pillar of unearned calm, a thief in a bespoke suit. He has no right. My presence here is a biological imperative. His is an intrusion. He dares to tell me where I can and cannot go. He speaks as if he has authority. I move to put him in his place. He does not even flinch. He holds out a cheap envelope, an administrative insult. I rip it from his hand. I will shred this paperwork and the man holding it. Then the words appear. A contract, a clause, my name. The signature is mine, but the meaning is alien. Forfeiture. The word is absurd. I would never. This is not possible. She must have tricked me. Her tears must have been a performance. This entire ordeal was a careful, calculated trap. He says I bullied her. I was efficient. I was ending what was already dead. I did not have time for sentiment or fine print. I made a clean cut, and she used the blade to sever me from my own children. My body roars a single truth. I am their father, but his words fall like stones. Legally, otherwise, you are nothing. The world fractures. It is a lie. It has to be a lie. She owes me my children. They are mine. My mind scrambles for purchase. This was his plan. Crow's. He saw her fragility and exploited it. He turned her against me. He knew she carried my sons. My family is not a game for him to play, but his voice cuts again. Cold, precise. He twists my actions into abandonment, into a crime. He rewrites history to make me the villain. Then a nurse appears. A door opens to a life that should be mine. The twins, they are there, so close. I can feel their presence. A primal pull. My sons are behind that door, but his final command is a locked gate. You do not get to see them. He turns and walks away. He walks into my children's room. The lock clicks. A sound of absolute finality. I am left in the hallway, alone. The rain on the glass is the only sound. I am Jackson Pierce. I built an empire from nothing. But in this moment, I am just a man on the wrong side of a door, watched by the world as everything I own, everything I am, is taken from me by a piece of paper I was too busy to read. They see a tyrant getting what he deserves. I see a king watching his kingdom burn. The headlines are a public execution. They use my name like a weapon. Every screen screams my failure. I sit in this car, this moving prison, and feel a tremor in my hands. It is not just rage, it is fear. An emotion so foreign I can barely name it. My phone rings. An endless siren of my own demise. The board, lawyers. And then Sienna, Her voice is not a comfort. It is an accusation. She speaks of her brand, of the merger, of her own image, not of my loss, not of my children. She was never a partner. She was an acquisition. And now my stock has plummeted. I am utterly, terrifyingly alone. She is in that room with him, with my children. I can picture it. The quiet light, the false peace. She is playing the survivor, the resilient mother. She was never strong. She was a project, a beautiful, fragile thing I had to manage. Now he manages her. He whispers his poison, and she calls it strength. He has turned my own wife, my own blood, into a weapon against me. The sight of her finding peace in my ruin is the deepest betrayal of all. I am the one who is bleeding, and they are celebrating. It is an abomination. A news alert flashes. The board is voting. The cowards are ousting me. They are dismantling my life's work. I see the stories. Supporters gathering for her. They hold signs with her name. They are cheering for a liar. A thief who stole my sons. The world has gone mad. It crowns the weak and punishes the strong. She never built anything. She only knew how to break. Now she has finally succeeded in breaking me. This is not justice. This is chaos. This is wrong. And no one else seems to see it. The plane ride is a descent into hell. The boardroom feels like a cage. My cage. Built with my vision. Now it is my tomb. The rain strikes the glass, a relentless drumming that matches the panic in my chest. Their faces are stone. These men owe me their fortunes, their careers. Now they look at me with cold dismissal. I try to command the room, a reflex, an old habit of a king who has forgotten he was deposed. I straighten my suit. It is a useless gesture. I am here to fight a war that has already been lost. A single, careless signature, a moment of distraction, and the entire world I built has turned to dust. Sit. The chairman's voice was ice. A single word that stripped me of all my power. I was a king in this room. Now I was a prisoner. The screen lit up, not with numbers, but with my sins, headlines. All of them screaming my name. Pierce CEO concealed pregnancy. Public erupts. Biotech scandal. Abandoned pregnant wife. Every word was a nail in my coffin. I tried to fight. This is a public relations problem. It was not. It was a pattern. My pattern. Then came the final blow. Financial misconduct. What? A folder slid across the polished wood. Transactions. A shell corporation. Millions of dollars. Gone. I did not authorize this, but my name was on it. My carefully constructed world was not just collapsing, it was a trap, and I had just walked right into it. This was a purge. I ordered them to approve those transfers. This was Crowell's doing. He had tampered with the records. So why are you asking me this, I thought. Were the transactions authorized from my office? With my login? My pulse began to thunder in my ears. Someone must have hacked my account. Santos just sneered at me. How convenient for you. It is Adrian Crowell. I hissed, my voice low and urgent. He is setting this all up. He wants to destroy me. Lee shook his head, his face a mask of disappointment. The timing fits your own decisions. The screen flickered. It showed pictures of Camila. She was pregnant in a hospital bed. Adrian held her. Then there were two small bassinets. A cold silence filled the room. Lee looked at me. You were not honest with us. A hot flush crept up the back of my neck. I did not know she was pregnant. She hid it from me. Lee's eyes were cold stones. We have records. They show you were told about temporary infertility. You knew a child was possible. You concealed this during the divorce. Then you announced your new engagement. My stomach twisted into a knot. And then Santos spoke. We have a legal document. It confirms you gave up your parental rights. The shame was a physical weight, crushing my lungs. Are you asking us to believe you? Lee's voice was calm, but sharp as glass. That you left your wife, tried to hide a pregnancy, and now should lead this company? I slammed my hand hard on the table. This company is me. No. Lee's quiet word hit me like a bullet. You were. I froze completely. He held up a single piece of paper. This is a vote for your immediate suspension. An investigation will follow. No, the word was a faint whisper. You do not have the power. We do, and we are using it. One by one, their hands went up around the table. Each vote was a new blade twisting inside me. I was suspended. I was powerless. I was erased. Just like I had erased Camila. This is wrong, I tried to say. I made this company, and you broke it, Lee said, his voice final. Because of your own actions. My vision started to blur at the edges. My phone buzzed over and over. I did not look, but the screen glowed with a message from Sienna. We are finished. Do not call me ever again. It was the final cut. The company, the engagement, my entire reputation, all gone. And somewhere in New York, the woman I had cast aside was finally free of me. But I was not done. Not yet. I was about to do something foolish, something dangerous, something that would change everything for all of us. I left that room in a complete haze. Rain hit my face, but I did not feel it. Reporters were yelling questions, but I did not hear them. My shoes made sounds in the puddles. I stumbled toward my car, but I could not get inside. I could not get a breath. I could not form a thought. My whole life was gone in 12 hours. The business I created, the woman on my arm, the name I had built. All of it destroyed because of Camila, because of Crowell, because of children I never thought were real. I pressed myself against a cold concrete wall. I tangled my hands in my own hair. How did this happen? I whispered to the empty air. How did she finally beat me? I saw her face again from that hospital video. She looked tired, but she was shining. Fragile, but Adrian held her like a prize. The image was burned into my mind. It was a picture of every single one of my mistakes. My anger was not for her. It was for me, and it was laced with terror. If those children were mine, they carried my future. They carried my name and my legacy, and I had signed every right to them away, a mistake I could not take back. But then a dark idea began to form. I could create a new pressure point, not with force, not with threats, but with information. I would find something on Adrian Crowell, something he wanted to keep hidden. If I could not take the twins from her by law, I would make sure he could not have her. I took out my phone. I dialed a number I had not called in many years. Marcus, I said when he answered, I need information on Crowell. Every secret, every flaw, everything he has buried. There was a very long silence. Jackson, he said, to go against Crowell is to end yourself. I do not care, I told him. Just do it. But his voice became hard. You are not listening. Crowell has friends in places you have never seen. If you do this, he will bury you. He will bury you so deep, the board will look like nothing. A cold shiver of fear ran down my spine, but my anger was stronger. I am already buried, I hissed into the phone, so start digging. I ended the call. The silence in the car was absolute. I was a king with no kingdom, a man with no name. They thought they had taken everything from me. They had no idea. They had only taken the things I could afford to lose. Now, I would fight with the only thing I had left. The part of me they could never see. The part that was willing to burn everything down. Just to watch Adrian Crowell choke on the smoke. The city lights blurred past my window. I saw nothing. I felt nothing but a cold, clean purpose. They had started this war, but I would be the one to finish it. Twins. My only legacy was healing in another man's care. Her job was to get better. My job was to get even. I saw her face again in my mind. The softness in her eyes was not for me anymore. It was for him, for my replacement. My blood burned with a quiet, terrible fire. He was watching over what was mine, my wife, my children, my future. He thought he was a protector. He had no idea he was just a placeholder. He was a temporary guardian of my legacy, and his time was running out. While he sat by her bed, playing the hero, I was making calls. I was pulling strings he did not even know existed. He thought the game was over. He thought he had won. The truth was, the game had only just begun, and the rules were now mine to write. He thought Pierce was the only threat. He did not know that a desperate man is the most dangerous threat of all. And I had absolutely nothing left to lose. Safe. A figure outside the hospital. It did not matter. He could post 100 guards. They could not stop what was coming. The world thought I was a broken man, hiding in the shadows, licking my wounds. They were wrong. The shadows were where I was reborn. Every news report, every article about my fall from grace was just fuel. It fed the cold fire inside me. They called me a monster. Soon, I would show them what a real monster looked like. While Adrian was looking out of windows, I was looking at blueprints, not of buildings, but of his life, his history, his secrets. The wolves were circling. He was right about that. But I was not the prey. I was the one who was about to let them all loose, and I would point them directly at him and at her. At my perfect, innocent family. They would soon learn that no one is ever truly safe, especially not from me. Dying. His jaw tensed. They wanted information. Information about my twins. My arms would have tightened around them. They were infants. But they were my infants. They were my bloodline, and my enemies wanted leverage. The word made his stomach drop. It made my heart pound with a terrible, new kind of hope. Leverage was a weapon, and it was a weapon I could use too. While he was making promises he could not keep, I was in a cheap room that smelled of defeat. My suit was gone. My power was gone. My phone rang. It was a number I did not know. I answered it. My voice was rough. Who is speaking? A calm voice answered me. A person who knows you have lost your company. I went still. If you are calling about the board, then you are wasting your time. It is not about that, the voice said smoothly. It is about your twins. A heavy silence fell. A deadly silence. My throat closed. What do you know about them? You are a desperate man, the voice said, and your desperation can be very useful. I swallowed. The sound was loud in the quiet room. What is it that you want from me? It is not about what I want, the voice replied. It is about what you want. You want access. You want information. You want control. A dark thrill pulsed through me. Meet me tomorrow, the man said, or you will lose the only thing you have left. The line went silent. I held the phone in a death grip. My knuckles were white. Someone else wanted them. Someone who saw them, not as children, but as pawns. Someone who thought I was weak. That I could be used. I hit the table with my fist. No, I whispered to the empty room. They belong to me. They are my children. But a cold truth washed over me. I had no legal claim. I had no moral claim. I had nothing but my own desperation. And that desperation was making me dangerous. An hour later, Adrian would return. His face would be hard. He would have answers. He would have a plan. He would try to be the hero. He had identified the man watching them. A fixer, a man who removes problems. The word would catch in her throat. Removed. But he was not there to cause harm. Not yet. He was there to collect information. On my babies, she would whisper. No, on you, he would say. On why a man like me would lose everything for a woman he threw away. Her eyes would fill with fear. But I never wanted to be in this war. And he would kneel. He would take her hands. He would tell her they would finish it together. He would look toward the window. He would promise that I was about to learn my lesson. He thought he was in control. He thought he knew the enemy, but he was wrong. I was not the enemy. I was just the beginning. The real war was coming. And I was no longer a player. I was the storm itself. He would be watching. He would not be the only one. The storm was no longer coming. It was here. We were all standing in its path. Camila, Adrian, Jackson. The rain had softened by the time she was released. She and the twins. They were cleared to go home. With close monitoring, she was exhausted, but hope was a fragile, new feeling inside her. I insisted they come to my home. It was more secure, better protected, far safer. She did not fight me. She could not. There were strange men near the hospital. Jackson was losing control. Something was coming. I knew it. It did not take long. My car pulled into the private garage. Then headlights flared behind us. Too bright, too fast. Tires screamed against the pavement. The rain was a good thing. It hid my desperation. I had to see her. I had to make this right. My arm shot across the seat, a reflex I did not understand, as his car stopped. Then the door was open, and I was stumbling out into the cold. I was a mess. This was not how a king approached his queen. But she had to understand. I called her name. My voice sounded weak. He stepped between us. That man. Her keeper. He blocked my path to my own life. He told me to leave, as if I were some stranger. He had no idea what was at stake. This was about my wife, but he corrected me. Cold words from a cold man. He claimed she was not mine, that I had no right. My blood burned. He stole her. He stole everything. But his voice was steady. He claimed I threw it all away. I moved toward my family. He stopped me. His forearm was a bar of steel against my throat. I was choking on my own need. I had to make him understand. My words came out as a gasp. I needed to see them. My children. Her face appeared then, soft in the harsh light. She held one of them. She asked me why. Why now? The question was a spear. My world stopped. The rain felt like tears on my face. My voice broke, because they could be mine. The air went still. Her silence was an accusation. Then she spoke. They were always yours. A lie. It had to be a lie. My mind raced. Then why hide them from me? I was the victim here. She talked about the past, her version of it. She said I told her she was broken, that she was the problem. Her voice cracked. She said I walked away. No, I had moved on. There was a difference. I had to fix this. I made mistakes. I could be a father. I wanted to be their father. I watched her face. I saw the calculation behind her eye. She was deciding my fate. A softness entered her expression. It was not love. It was something harder. It was judgment. No, the word was quiet. It destroyed me. She said I signed my rights away. That was business. A clean cut. It was not meant for this. It was not meant for children. Real children. My throat felt tight. I did not know. Her answer was quick. You did not want to know. It felt like a slap. He released me then. The guard dog stepped back beside its master. My voice was a ruin. So I lose them. Is that it? She pulled the child closer to her, as if protecting it from me. You lost them when you lost me. The words made no sense. But I loved you. I whispered it to the rain. Her eyes held a terrible truth. You loved being in charge. Without that, you had nothing. I felt myself sway. The pride was washing away, leaving only the raw wound. And then he spoke again, his voice a final nail. Leave. This is your last warning. You will not come near them again. He promised pain if I returned. I looked at what I had lost. A mother, 2 babies, a man who now owned my world. I saw the ruin of my own making. Then I turned. I walked back into the storm. I leaned against her protector. For the first time, I think, I was truly free. But my justice was not yet complete. Tomorrow the world would see him for what he was. The city was alive the next morning. It felt like it was waiting for me. Everyone was talking. Not about market trends, not about some new scandal. They were talking about me, the woman who was thrown away and refused to break. There were people outside his building. They held signs. Signs for me. They believed in me. Justice for mothers. It was happening. Power does not make a family. Love does. I corrected my mistake. Inside that fortress, she was holding my children, my son and my daughter. I imagined the sunlight on their faces, a warmth I would never feel. I was the ghost in my own story. Her lawyer arrived, a shark in a tailored suit. It is time. Those words echoed in my empty office. She looked at the babies, my babies, drawing strength from them. My replacement stood beside her. He offered his hand, not as a command, as a support. She took it. Of course she took it. They went downstairs to a hidden room, a stage for my execution. Only a few reporters were there, her chosen few. The cameras flashed. I imagined her standing there. Not the timid woman I remembered. She was someone else now. Someone forged in my absence. Someone strong. Unbreakable. The lawyer pointed to the microphone. Go ahead. Tell them your story. Her voice came through the small speaker on the phone. It was quiet, but it carried. She spoke of wanting a peaceful life, a family, with a man she thought had loved her. The lie stung. I gave her everything. She twisted the truth. She said people use your kindness, your trust. The world listened, hanging on her every word. She said life gives you a second chance to rebuild what was broken. She looked right at the camera. I felt her eyes on me. She did not hide the children. She protected them from me, from the man who thought she was not good enough. But I am enough. Her words were a verdict. My children are enough. We will live without fear. Then the lawyer held up a piece of paper. The weapon that would end me. This, she announced, is the document. The form I signed to give up my rights as a parent. Final, irrevocable. The reporters gasped. The lawyer continued. No custody, no visits, no claims. The children belonged only to Camila. Flash after flash. I felt the air leave my lungs. Then the second strike landed. Not from her, from the lawyer. We have also given evidence of Mr. Pierce's illegal financial deals to federal agents. An investigation is open. Murmurs. Shock. I saw his jaw tighten on the screen. He approved. This was his victory. From across the country, I stood alone. Reporters shouted questions I could not hear. I watched the live stream on a stranger's phone. My world was gone. The board, the company, the forfeiture. It was all her. She had taken everything, because I had left her with nothing. No, that was not right. I had not left her. She had forced me away. I built this world with my own two hands. Every stone, every deal, every sacrifice was for this. For legacy. I watched her on the screen, her words weaving a neat little tragedy for the world to consume. She called it truth. I called it a betrayal of the highest order. This was not about justice. It was about destruction. My destruction. I gave her a kingdom, and she wanted a voice. I gave her security, and she called it a cage. The cameras swiveled toward me. Their lenses were like 100 hungry eyes. They saw a monster. And for the first time, I felt the crown I had forged begin to slip. This was not her victory. This was the bill for my empire coming due. The penthouse was a tomb. The city lights mocked my solitude. I saw them together, her new protector. He spoke of joy and futures. He offered her what I never would: freedom. I never understood that word. Power was my language. Control was my love. She was my most prized possession. And she had simply walked away. I watched the skyline, a kingdom of glass and light that now felt hollow. Every tower was a monument to what I had taken, not what I had built. She was right. I did not offer her a life. I offered her a sentence. She thought her heartbreak was her story. No, it was mine. It was the moment my creation turned on me. It was the echo of every door I had locked, every choice I had made to preserve my world. Her strength was not born from her pain. It grew in the cracks of my own foundation. I saw her life beginning again, safe, whole, and I knew it was built upon the ruins of mine. There is no great lesson in this, no noble truth to be found in the wreckage. Some men build empires. Other men are destroyed by them. The walls I constructed to keep her in were the same walls that now held me captive. This is the closure I earned. An empty room, a silent phone, the cold reflection of a king with no one left to rule. If you see a villain in this story, then you have learned nothing. You see a man who paid the price. You see a man who lost. And as she steps into the light, remember the shadow that she had to leave behind. That is where I will remain. I am not a lesson. I am a warning. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.